So this week, many of us, if we have not left already, as we have not, are making our way to visit our family for the holidays. Now, when I was a child, this was one of my favorite parts of the holidays, was not necessarily the presents, but actually getting up, going over to family's home, seeing all the crazy aunts and uncles and all the cousins, and the excitement that ensued. And the other day, I felt very sad for those who don't have this experience. I thought how lucky I was to have such a big and loving and exciting family. And I see all the people that are so stressed out about having to go and interact with their families and have all these obligatory relationships that they have by blood. And then I realized that maybe I was actually looking at my own family history with rose-tinted glasses, because as I have learned since I was a child, the adults in my family and during the time of my childhood were just as troubled as the adults and the families that we have today. Maybe even more so, who knows? I could not see that as a child. I just thought it was part of the excitement and the fun and the weirdness of growing up, I don't know, a Subu. I was not grateful for the fact that I didn't know at the time and I could enjoy it for what it was. And so this Sunday, the Sunday before Christmas, every year we remember the great, large, exciting, and profoundly dysfunctional family of Jesus Christ, all of his ancestors before him, and all the history of his people before him as well. But before we consider the saints and the sinners in the family history of Jesus, though, let us consider some of the most vexing dynamics which we may encounter, if not this holiday, at some time in the future, in our own families. Now, in a recent article from Psychology Today entitled, "How to Handle a Crazy Maker," certified marriage and family counselor Kimberly Key gives us some very excellent advice for handling family at the time of the holidays. And not necessarily just for those who have crazy makers in their families, and I'll explain what that means, but really good advice for all of our families. So what is a crazy maker? He describes the following scenarios. 1, a mother gave her son 2 ties for an upcoming family occasion. She then got mad at him when he showed up at the party wearing one of them. She wanted him to wear the other one. 2, years later, after the son had grown up and married, he presented his wife with 2 dresses for their anniversary dinner. He then got upset with her for wearing the wrong dress of the 2. 3, a few years later, after the couple had a daughter, his wife accused the daughter of hugging the wrong parent first, even if the little girl switched whom she hugged each time. And last, so you see it perpetuates from generation to generation and to person. Crazy makers, she says, come in all shapes and sizes and can have good and bad intentions. Some know that they are being manipulative and oppressive. Others haven't got a clue. Some engage in their tactics consistently. Others provide intermittent surprise attacks. The challenge is to recognize the behavior, assess if it's from a healthy or unhealthy place, and then employ the proper strategies to stay sane and empower yourself. So maybe it's a little bit of an extreme example. Some of us may not know anybody who fits the bill of the crazy maker. Some of us may, in fact, fit the bill quite well ourselves. And if I am to be rigorously honest, I would look back at my life and say, yes, there are times when I certainly was. If you have a relationship in which you feel you are constantly being set up for failure and you never know what to expect, you may know a crazy maker. He describes 3 different typical types: the narcissist, the drama cultivator, and the stealth bomber. Narcissists, first of all, cannot empathize with anyone, meaning they cannot relate to your feelings. They only feel their own wants and needs. They are emotionally stunted, like a perpetually demanding 2-year-old. It is always about them. We all know what a narcissist is. We probably have all met a narcissist at some time. And they are more common than we would like to admit. Drama cultivators. For them, everything is a crisis. They expend their energy and yours responding to crises. They cannot empathize with others because they are too wrapped up in their chaos. Yet they need you and your energy and don't want you to leave them. So they go to great lengths to get and keep your attention. Like a wounded child, they also swing from loving and supporting you to getting angry and detesting you. Their moods and responses are inconsistent, and dealing with them feels like you are walking in a field of landmines. Or, as I've heard more than once, walking on eggshells around such and such a person. The third, stealth bombers. I quote her whole thing here because I find it very amusing. Stealth bombers, they look like roses compared to the narcissist and drama cultivator, but beware their sharp thorns. These highly dependent people try to please you, but the nice things they do have a cost. They are the martyr that keeps score. Like a stealth bomber, just when you think everything is okay, they get you. Their modus operandi is to sabotage you while they look innocent. For instance, they will commit to doing something when they really don't want to do it, and then consistently bail out at the last minute. Or they'll conveniently forget. Perhaps they'll run late and miss the deadline. Everyone has these experiences now and again, but stealth bombers do it all the time, and they get you to feel guilty about it. They will make up excuses with the most ambiguous details and sulk and act like a victim if you get upset. They will conveniently lose items, forget dates, miss deadlines, ruin plans, and then become sad and withdrawn because, after all, they've tried so hard. Anybody come to mind yet? Now, looking back at my own childhood, like I said, there may have been some of those people around for the sake of my family and the fact that this may show up on YouTube. I will not name names. Like I said, I probably was one of the worst offenders. But one characteristic that is shared across the spectrum here, and you might have heard it a couple times, is that they lack empathy. The crazy maker cannot empathize with you and recognize your perspective or how their behavior affects others. Likewise, they don't follow the same rules of communication. They give mixed messages that lead to confusion and disappointment and frustration. Now, here's something that's really important to understand. All family communication is ritualistic. What do I mean by that? You don't dress up investments and swing sensors, but it is still a ritual. It follows patterns that are identifiable, predictable, and regular. It's like a dance. This is true both of healthy and dysfunctional or unhealthy family dynamics. A very healthy family, their communication is like a dance that is beautiful to behold, a liturgy of peace, a revelation of God's peace and love for the world. And since most of us are not blessed with that perfect image of the family, we're probably more likely to have a dance that is clumsy. People bump into each other, they step on each other's toes, and it tends to be the same kind of problems and mistakes over and over. As I've said in my own life, and I've seen over and over again, most families have one argument that just keeps re-emerging year after year. It's the same thing with different maybe faces and names, but it's the same argument. And a crazy maker is inconsistent and unpredictable. And if you throw that into the mix, your dance is more like a mosh pit on the holidays even. So Kimberly Key gives us 4 strategies for dealing with a crazy maker to any extreme that may in fact be useful for all of our family interactions. The first, take an observer's point of view. There's something, she says, about detaching and seeing a crazy maker from an observer point of view that helps you not get entangled in their mess. It's almost like listening to someone speaking a different language. All of a sudden, their attacks seem silly and confirm to you that they are dancing to a different tune. Letting go can be the biggest power struggle deflator of all. It can also save your sanity because you can stop yourself from engaging in a needless battle or feeling the sting of a double bind. The double bind being where they set you up for failure. One of the ways that you can make mental peace for yourself, mental space, and healthy detachment when dealing with your family is through prayer. If you're on your way to visit your family, consider spending some time in prayer before you get there. Maybe on the car ride over. Turn off the radio. Say the Jesus prayer for a while. You can also do that afterwards to give thanks to God for hopefully a good experience. And perhaps most significantly, you can even pray right in the middle of the situation. You know, we have this little thing in the Orthodox Church, a tradition we call the Jesus prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. We just sang it in the office to our Lord Jesus before the liturgy. You don't have to say that prayer out loud. It can be something that's right inside your heart. And when you're talking to somebody and you start to suspect that this person is going into crazy maker mode or is already there, maybe it'd be good to just silently and quietly, listen, but also run the Jesus prayer in the background of your mainframe, and you'll be a lot happier if you do. 2, she says, maintain a healthy sense of self-worth. Sometimes we attract crazy makers in our life because they reflect our own lack of self-worth. We let bullies bully because somehow we feel we deserve it on some level. We teach people how to treat us and often reinforce crazy-making behavior in our lives through accepting it. Don't. Start telling yourself you are worth more. You can't really ask for something from somebody else if you aren't giving it to yourself first. So love and respect yourself. Be gentle with yourself, especially when dealing with a crazy maker. As proof, notice if the crazy maker in your life treats other people better than you. Pay attention and notice if those people exude a higher sense of self-worth. That might be a clue to improve your own self-worth through positive self-talk and care. Okay, blah, blah. That sounds like a lot of psychological mumbo-jumbo. And Christians are often wary of jumping on these healthy self-esteem bandwagon. And frankly, for good reasons, because too often a kind of a cult of self-esteem leads to nothing more than vanity and vainglory. So self-worth as an end for its own sake is not something we necessarily exalt in the faith. But this is where our reading from Hebrews can be of great benefit to us today. Imagine all the trouble that the saints of the Old Testament church suffered, very often at the hands of their own kinspeople. We read in verse 39, and all these, having obtained a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise, God having provided something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. So think of all that they suffered and realize that God has prepared for them a wonderful fulfillment of promise, but is waiting to give it so that we might be a part of it as well. You see, God has a worth for us. That is to say, we are worthy in God's eyes. Even though we make ourselves so often unworthy to God, God still values us. So much so that He is waiting to give the promise to the Old Testament saints until we can all be a part of it too. Until our part is also fulfilled. So you don't need to even have the question of self-worth, because you have God-worth. God values you. And if you recognize that and embrace that, what need is there of even self-esteem? 3, keep a healthy distance. Do you really have to have that crazy maker in your life, or can you just keep a healthy distance? Are you in a trap, believing that you will be worth more if the crazy maker finally treats you better? They probably won't, so don't be afraid to move on. Narcissists need an audience. Drama cultivators require others to maintain the drama, and stealth bombers are dependent. In other words, you are the dance partner in their crazy-making dance, and you can choose to stop dancing with them. There are other jobs and other friends that are healthy. If it is a relative, you can still keep a healthy distance. Keep visits short and reward yourself afterward with nurturing care and positive self-talk. Okay, so this is also one of the harder lessons. We are led to believe that to be a dutiful family member, that we have to completely throw ourselves onto the stakes and suffer whatever our family members have to do, especially if it's, say, our parents or somebody that we feel obliged to. That is not necessarily true. We are afraid that keeping a distance means that we're not showing love, but sometimes that can be exactly what we're doing. Sometimes distance is what love requires. Consider the image of Abraham that we have in today's epistle. Abraham dwelt in the land of promise, intense, but lived as a sojourner. That is, as if he was living in a foreign land. He was waiting for the city that was going to be built by a greater hand, the city built by God. So the Christian, even amongst their own family members, is called to exhibit this type of healthy detachment, which is to recognize that we are built for God's family, for God's heavenly community. So even amongst our own family members, we should treat it as we are living among a foreign land. We are sojourners amongst ourselves. If they share the faith, great. Then we have that unity in Christ, which goes far above blood and makes a much more meaningful tie. We also can think of the ascetic fathers and mothers who dwelt in the desert, like those Old Testament saints, of whom the world was not worthy. They also dwelt often alone, destitute, wearing sheepskins, etc., not because they hated people, but for the love of the world, so that they could pray for the world and for its salvation. And we should remember that in the end, one of the reasons why we keep a healthy distance is we're not doing the crazy maker in our life any favors by enabling them and helping them persevere in their sickness. We should have pity on them and pray for them and realize they do not know what they do. Lastly, cultivate internal validation. I'm not sure how this differs from the other one about self-worth, but let's see what she has to say. She says, sometimes people won't play fair. They'll use crazy-making tactics and engage in power struggles to feel better about themselves. You can play into it and escalate the battle, or you can take the higher road. Taking the higher road includes finding internal strength. Some refer to it as spirituality. Some feel it from the heart. It's that endless supply inside that rejuvenates you and causes people to become resilient in the face of the most challenging adversity. It is the source of hope. Tapping into it is proof that you've developed a good boundary. People cannot drain your energy field because it's directly tied into the abundant source of courage, hope, and love. You don't have boundary leaks because you are no longer dependent on external validation. Fear is replaced with faith that the source of hope is abundant inside. Your heart is not hardened, and your mind is not cynical. You are fully adaptable to change and at peace. In short, you are the change you want to see, and you are modeling it for the world. Again, a little psychobabbling, jargony, but actually right on the money. Christians, of course, call this abundant hope what? God. Theos. Lumnazeo. Bože. And when we begin to trust in that higher power, that trust is called faith. And as we just sang, great are the accomplishments of faith. Faith in God is the key to overcoming all family dysfunction. After all, what did we just read about faith? The time would fail to tell of Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah, also David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became valiant in battle, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. These great saints and also Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, Moses and the rest, are now our family members too, through our union with Christ. We have access to that same hope, that same strength, the same God as they did. And if faith could accomplish such great things in them, what is a little bit of crazy making? What power does it really have? What do we have to fear from our own family members? What stress, what worry, what anxiety is there really to have if we put our feet on the rock of faith? So, brothers and sisters, in conclusion, let us bring peace to our families this holiday. Peace which comes from within. As St. Paul says, the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. This Christmas and every Christmas. Amen.